So what Streamlit is basically, this is a really fast way. This is a Python library, first of all. We can create tools really fast and create a prototype out of that. This is a library which is used by most of the data scientists right now all around the world. It includes the functionality of all the libraries that data scientists use, and it can create really cool stuff in really no time. So right now, we have a few of the functionalities that we have that we can control. And in the coming years that we can understand, it's going to include a lot more stuff. So you would have more control over it. At first, it started as basically creating something where you can reflect whatever you have learned and create the charts which can change according to the data that we are feeding in. Now, later on, we have within 2 or 3 years of time, we have included so many features that it can be used for creating a GenAI related applications as well. So some of the elements that it has are text, these graphs. There are some input widgets from where you can take inputs from various places. For example, you have simple text widgets. This is a text input widget that you can use. Then there are some sliders. Then there are some select boxes, multi-box boxes, radio buttons. We are going to take a look into all of this, and we are going to be coding live so that you can follow along. So this is one of the applications that I'm going to start. So for creating any applications, what do we do? First of all, we have to have Python. So let's check if everybody have Python in their systems. Yep, this is 3.11.1. So now we are going to create a simple environment here. And that's how we create an environment, Python -mbenv. This is a Python, again, another functionality that we can use. And if we just close it and reopen it. So yes, we are logged into the environment. Now, there are going to be some of the requirements that we are going to use. So we are going to install all of those using pip. First, we are going to be Now, there are 3 requirements right now: Streamlit, OpenAI, and this is basically not really required for every place, but in some of the systems, you would require it. A particular system of ULib3, this is a library version that you would need in order for taking care of any of the interruptions that you might face in the process. So we are going to be using the command pip3 install -r requirements.txt. This is going to install all of the libraries which you require for creating this application. This is going to take probably 2 minutes of time while it's downloading. In the meantime, let's talk about the documentations. If you just go to the Streamlit application, the Streamlit web page, you can just go to the docs here. In the docs, you have something called API references, in which all of the functionalities that you would require is already there. You can just check out whatever you want for the application that you are thinking of, whatever ideas that you have, and how you are going to involve some of the things that are there. I think it's going to take a while, so let's just start using one of the older deployments that I made. So let's start with this one. In order to deploy any of the application, Streamlit application, what you need is in the start, you just have to import it. As you import any of the libraries, along with them, some of the libraries which you are going to use. Right now, I'm going to use image from PIL, and I also am also going to use pandas and NumPy, and we are going to see how we can just create these data frames, and we can just deploy it right away on the Streamlit application. Now, in order to deploy the application, we just need the simple command streamlit run and name on the name of that particular application, whatever you have named as that file. So mine is tap.py, and this is how it looks like. And we are live already. So let's give it a header. And so, yeah, this is how the Streamlit application is going to look like. Now there is one configuration that you can choose. You can choose the layout while whether you want it to be a wide or a narrow one. So if I just choose that, and it's going to be a narrow, and this is how you can change one of the configurations here. And there are so many other that you can take a look into. Now let's see if we can just push a logo right here. So using just this command st.image, and we can just pull the image using the image library of PIL, and we can just show it on the page itself. That's it. This is just one command that we have to use. Now there are some other commands as well. For example, st.subheaders, st.text, st.markdown that you can use for various kinds of users. Now, these are some of the write elements which Streamlit has. You can just write it, and you can use it to write anything that you want and show it to the users. How do you want to show? How do you want to create the web page around it? Then you have something called divider that you can use. There is something called data frames. Let's go into the data frames right now, and how can we utilize it? So in this code, what we are doing is we are just creating a 2-column data frame, and we are using write. Write is a magic command which can take the DFs or basically markdown or any kinds of things, and it can just show it beautifully. So as you see, we have just changed some of the code st.write particular DF, and it just show it on the web page itself. And now there is the really important functionality called containers and columns. Containers are basically nothing but where you keep something, and you can you position something into the page itself. And columns give you the functionality to divide the page into 12 columns, and then wherever you put some of the columns, you can just put it right in those columns, and it will be divided, and it will position on those particular columns themselves. And then there is something called metric you can take a look into. So what we have done here is we have divided the whole Streamlit page into 3 columns. In every column, we have kept something. And metric is basically when you want to showcase some of the matrices from the data, and you can change these matrices accordingly. And so it will you can create a live application out of it. So as you would see, this is divided into 3 parts. And the matrix is basically taking all the data that you have passed in and given it a really good look that you can change as the data is changing in the background. Now there is something called JSON. You can create a JSON profile out of it, and you can show it to the users as well. So this is how the JSON would look like. It has a really pragmatic way to show it. Then there are some, then we can talk about the kind of inputs that we can think of while taking from the users themselves. There are a few selectors that we can change. So right now you have something called radio button. Radio button is nothing, but if you have to choose one out of 3 to 4 different options, and this is how the radio button looks like. One of the most important thing is this, you have to create a variable around the radio button, and any of the information that the user would be choosing, that would be stored in that variable, which you can use later on. And if we see right here, so this is a simple thing that we have used. So we have created a variable called genre. And in that one, we are creating comedy, drama, and documentary as 3 of the radio buttons. And if we are saying if the genre is equal to comedy, just write something. And if it's not, then write something else. Right. So it's selected as comedy right now. It says you selected comedy. If we select something, so you didn't select comedy. Just as simple as that. Now there is something called select button. There is something called slider that we can take a look into as well. Again, you would need to choose a variable, and everything would be saved in that variable itself. So there is this slider that you can choose, and there is this input button. That is a select box. And based on those criteria, you can just make the selection. And according to those selections, you can use if-else statements and also just change it according to what you need. Then there is something called charts that we can take a look into. Probably I'll just show you 1 or 2 of them, so you would have an idea around it. So here we are creating random data for 20 points, and we are creating 3 columns around it. We have created a data frame, and we are just putting that data frame for the chart into st.area chart or st.line chart. These are some of the charts that all of the data scientists use all the time, and this is how it looks. It has a really clear view and also really smart understandings, and how do we want to represent, and also really beautiful UI as well. Let's move on to some of the things. For example, you can also showcase the images. You can also show your videos as well, audio, whatever you can think of. And then there is something called containers. Yeah. Now, containers is really an important thing to understand right now. How do you place the containers suggests where do you want to keep anything. So let's create probably 2 containers right now. Container one, container. Right now, we are just using those 2 containers, and we are writing something. This is container 1, this is container 2, and if we just change the position of containers, so for example, we put container 2 over container 1, and this will change. Yeah, this is container 2 and this is container 1. So changing the position of the containers will tell you where are you placing a data that you want to present it to the user. Then there is something called extender that you can take a look into. One of the important things that might come in handy for you guys would be taking text input from the user, right? So there are some things like st dot text input, and for text input there are 2 to 3 parameters that you have to pass in. One is the label, what do you want to call that particular, and some information about it. Then there is something called placeholder where you would give some more information to the user, and accordingly if you would see this will store something right. second. Yep. So this is label goes here, the default text goes here, and if we write something, let's see if user. If there is some user input, we can just write it right now, and it will show how can we use something. So if we just press enter and it writes it. So you can think of these kinds of inputs that you can take, and then you're going to be defining something called button, and that button will create some kind of an interface for a user to click on, and then you can deploy your functionality behind it. So and here is how we can use the button functionality right here. So there is a submit button. If I submit and it shows me whatever it is written. There are at least 20 or 30 more functionalities that are really important, and you can just check it out into the docs page here, Streamlit docs. There are checkboxes that you can use for media elements. There are a few images, videos, audios, and all other kinds of things. Then there are utilities, there are layouts that you really want to check out. There is something called sidebar. You can create two bifurcations for user to choose from the sidebar and from the main area. Then there are columns that we have discussed about. There are tabs and other places, and this is how you're going to be placing all of your items, and how do you want an interactive user interface for your application. Then there is really important thing that you are going to be working on is how do you create forms out of it, and there are some more utilities that you can check into. Okay, let's start creating an application, and then let's see how do we use all of this functionality in one place, and how do we put it into the use case for us. So we are going to be starting from scratch. Let's import some of the things that we want. Also, so there is something that I was just working around, and there is an app that I want to create right now. Should I do it? What app does it is, I just give it an educational background, what my educational background is. And I ask the ChatGPT, should I be taking a look into something that I want to go into? So if I'm working as a data scientist, should I be working as, should I at least take a look into an interior designer or not? So it gives me a comic reply, and the prompt, I've already selected some of the prompt. So these are three of the pipelines that I'm going to be using today. One is getting the answer, the particular answer that it will be creating. Again, the prompt is, as a comic career consultant, create a humorous reply for the following question about whether someone choose or what user is thinking and to get into. Elaborate your answers, and this is basically how do we prompt engineer our prompts basically. Then I'm creating a prompt, and for create the prompt for describing an image that I want. And in the end, I'm using the DALI model to create a really good image for me to present there. So let's start. What we are going to be doing is in two of the columns. In the first column, we are going to be importing the image. This is the name of the image, logo.png. In second column, we are going to be defining the title. Let's just deploy this application so we can see if this is working fine or not. Yep. So this is how we can use the column functionality, as I told you. In the first column, we are just using some logo that we have already taken. And in the second column, we are describing the header, the title, basically. Then we are going to be using something for describing what the app is going to do. Simple app. Sure. Now we are going to be taking some of the users input, that is getting the background. Also getting the question. So in this way, we are going to be taking the user inputs and we are going to be saving it in some variables, as I told you. Then we are going to be using a button, which is going to take all of these things and generate and use the OpenAI models that we have used and that we are using. Yep. So this is working fine. And we are also going to create an else statement that is a good way to deal with it. So we are going to be importing the functions which we have defined in AI, and this is how it's going to look like. AI.answer, that is, we are going to get the answer, and then st.write the answer, probably get that image also. So image is going to be using the prompt from the answer itself, and then it's going to be displaying the image. And probably I want the image above the answer, and also I want to give some cue that the function is running or not. So there is something called sv.spinner. we use it with the web functionality. And right now, in the end, what we are going to do is probably create a refresh button as well. Let's see. Let's see if it works or not. I have an educational background, let's say, in data science. And I have a question. Should I do pool cleaning jobs? Now, this is what an interactive theme looks like. So you present some cues for people to know that if something is working in the background or not. So there is something called SD spinner, and we can choose other things as well. And if you would see, it has generated an image which is related to what I'm going to be asking or not. And so I just presented that I have a background in data science. And I'm asking the question, should I do pool cleaning jobs or not? And it is giving me an image, which is slightly funny as well. And it's giving me a good answer as well. Pool cleaning jobs definitely isn't the most obvious choice for someone with a data science background. So yeah, it's creating job. And again, it's all being done by OpenAI. And with this, I would say within just, let's say, 34 lines of codes, we have been able to create an application, use some AI backend as well, and create the API calls. And yeah, that's all. So in this way, we can use something like Streamlit Python module to create at least a prototype for the users to choose from. Now the functionality could be endless, and you can just think of also using a user input, and you can create some linkages with the databases. And you can create some front end for user to create a new these accounts as well, and you can just deploy it out on Render or someplace else, and just give it to the users for validation. And also, I have been listening, some people are deploying full-blown apps on Streamlit as well. So yeah, that is the Streamlit workshop for you guys. I hope everything was good. And if you have some questions, how do we employ some of the things that you're not really able to understand? How do we create more user interactive places? And also, just one last functionality that you might want to take a look into is the state variable that we have in JavaScript as well. So how the Streamlit application works is every time you click on the button or every time you interact with this, the whole page refreshes. So there is something called state variable, and you choose something to be saved into the state variable so that you can use it later on. That is as simple as that. And you can just take a look into the documentations, reach out to me if you have some confusions. I'd be there to help you out. And thank you all. That's all.